My name is Carol Steele too. One day Willis Peterson, another one of his boyfriends, came to Nephi. I was teaching primary. That was when they had primary after school. After primary we got out and there sat Willis. I went running out and said hi, "Where's Ned?" Willis said he's been in a really bad accident. The mine where he was working had an explosion and he got blown up in it. They've taken him to Provo to the hospital. Do you want to go? I said yes. So I gave my books to Donna and told her to tell Mom that I'd gone to Provo to see Ned at the hospital. We drove to Provo, and all the way over I was just thinking, wow, how terrible that could have been. I thought of the worst things that I could even imagine thinking about. When I walked into the hospital and seen him, it was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. He was wrapped clear from his waist clear to the top of his head. Just like a mummy. All of the bandages were blood-stained. The only thing not wrapped was a little hole cut out for his mouth and his nose so he could breathe. Farrell Wall, a friend of Ned's that he'd been working with, was lying in the bed next to him and he looked just the same way. You couldn't even tell them apart. Both of them looked just like mummies. Their bandages were all blood-soaked. They could talk to us. They knew we were there. But the doctors told Ned's mother and dad that they better stay there that night because they didn't expect them to live. I phoned Mom and told her that I wanted to stay. She said that it would be all right, so I stayed too. That night I didn't sleep 1 minute. I prayed all night that he'd be all right. And that he'd live, and the next day when we walked in he was still alive. They had both had several priesthood blessings. Both Ned and Farrell were still alive. The next day we found out what had really happened because we couldn't get too much out of them the day before. What had happened was, Ned and Farrell were what they called muckers. They had done their jobs and were on their way out. The miner Carlisle Wall got up and started to light his rounds of dynamite. He had already lit the top row. Then his light went out and he hollered, "Hey, somebody with a light, come quick." Now in those days the miners wore lights on their heads, on their hats, so they could see. Ned had his light and Farrell's light was going out, so he was down on one knee trying to fix his light. Ned ran right over to the face of the mine and handed his light to Carlisle. The miner took Ned's light and lit the bottom row of dynamite. Ned said that there was smoke everywhere and the fuses were just curling, and he said we'd better get the heck out of here. The miner said that they had to light that round. Just as this was said, the dynamite blew up right in Ned's face. Carlisle Wall was bending down, so it went right over the top of him. It blew up right in Ned's face. This knocked him back about 30 feet. This was where Farrell was. It hit Farrell and knocked both of them down. Neither one of them was passed out, both of them were awake. They got up and started feeling around. Ned said, "Farrell, where are you? Are you okay?" Ned and Farrell got together. Everything was pitch black. They started feeling around looking for a way to get out. Ned and Farrell started to go out. They found the train track that leads out of the tunnel, so they began to go along that to help them get to safety. One of the other guys that had been there had gotten a hold of a train car, and they could hear him coming out. They stood out to the side to avoid being ran over while the train car passed them. After this car passed, they knew this was the best way to get out of the tunnel, so they found another train car which was empty, and started pushing their way out. Together Farrell and Ned pushed the car to the opening of the mine. As soon as Ned got out, he said that he was pretty sure that he couldn't see because when he looked outside in the bright sunshine, he could feel the sun on his face, but everything was still dark black. One of Ned's best friends saw him walk out of the opening and said, "I sure hope Ned isn't hurt that bad." Little did he know that it was Ned that he was looking at the whole time. He looked so bad that he didn't even recognize him. He said they got out and tried to wash off a little bit. Ned said that when he touched his face it was completely wet. And he knew that he was a mess. He said it was hot. They had been hit with blasting powder and millions of rocks. They had holes all the way through them everywhere. They were trying to wash up with water, and Ned said it was really stinging bad. Someone had a Jeep there. So they put them in the back of the Jeep. They got all the guys together and put them in the back of this Jeep. Then they started down the hill. One of the guys, Farrell's brother Bud Wall, jumped on a horse that was there. He wasn't hurt too badly. He took off as fast as he could go to Santa Queen. He went to his mother's house first. Then he told everybody in Santa Queen what had happened, and that they had a blow-up in the mine. Farrell's mother and dad and Ned's mother and dad all jumped in a car and took off for the hospital. Ned had a large hunk of a jagged rock stuck in his forehead. All the way down he was trying to pull it out because of the pain it was causing. It was really bugging him terribly and he was trying as hard as he could to get it out. He kept wiggling it back and forth because of how bad it was bothering him. Finally the jeep made it to Payson. By this time they already had a police escort. They decided they were hurt too badly for Payson Hospital, so they took them right to Provo Hospital. I guess they took him in on a stretcher. When they pried the large rock out of Ned's head, the one he was trying to get out, he said it was just like someone took a bucket of hot water and just poured it over his head. Blood just ran all over his head, face and stomach and all over. So if he would have gotten that rock unwedged while they were on their way to Provo, he would have bled to death in a matter of minutes. They had to cauterize his head to stop it from bleeding. I was told that they had to cut their clothes off. Then they proceeded to get all the rocks out of them. They said that there were rocks sticking out of them all over. They removed all they could and then bandaged them up. They never did get all the rocks out. I guess this is about to where I came, after they got them all bandaged up. They both had to stay in the hospital every day for a month. I think it was a month and 1 day, 31 days. Then they finally got to go home. Both Farrell and Ned were permanently blind. Farrell said that he could see a little light. Ned could see nothing but blackness all the rest of his life, just blackness. Farrell could kind of see dark from light was all he could see. In fact, Farrell said one day a sagebrush blew across the road. And he thought it was one of his little kids. So that shows about how much Farrell could see.